Welcome to the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. There are no traffic jams along the Extra Mile when you're studying for your bar exam. And now your hosts, Jackson Mummy and Megan Saya from Celebration Bar Review.
Well, hey everybody, welcome to the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. This is Jackson Mummy. I'm one of your hosts. And if you've been a longtime listener of the podcast, you might have noticed that we used a different introduction today. I thought, coming up on 5 years of the podcast, maybe it was time to freshen that up a little bit. So we've just made that change, and I'm excited about that. It's the little things that get me going in the morning. But you'll also notice that the introduction introduces our co-host, Megan Saya. And Megan will be joining me in just a few minutes to do our weekly rundown of what's going on in the bar exam world. So I hope you'll stick around for that. It was a very busy week when it came to the July 2020, September 2020, fall 2020 bar exams. And so we're going to bring you up to date on everything that's been happening and our interpretation and take on that. So please stick around for just a few minutes and we'll get right into that. We also thought today's episode would be a good time to bring in an interview with a successful bar exam taker. We know there's been a lot of bad news, a lot of difficult times and hard situations, and we stopped doing our interviews for a short while, obviously, to reflect on the news around coronavirus. After Megan and I finish going through the news of the week, we're going to share with you an interview we did recently with a successful Florida bar taker. It's really important in these difficult times to see stories and hear stories from people who have succeeded even in the face of hardships. And that's definitely what our guest today is going to be talking about. It's just an amazing story, and I think you're going to really like hearing what she has to say. Before we get to that, I want to let you know that our podcast is sponsored by our all-new free training webinar. It's called Now is the Best Time to Take the Bar Exam, Why You Should Ignore the Crowds and the Fear. During this 1-hour free training session, we're going to walk you through all of the recent news and changes around the bar exam coming up in July and into the fall. And then we're going to share with you the strategy that we think is particularly appropriate for repeat bar takers and non-traditional bar students, why we think you actually stand a better chance of succeeding in this upcoming set of exams than you have in years and years. And we'll share that entire strategy with you. Then at the end of the training, I'll do a live Q&A to answer any questions that you might have about your jurisdiction, about what's happening, or about how to implement this strategy. This webinar training has been really popular. We're doing it a week, and so you can register for free just by going to the show notes here for the video or the audio. If you'd like more information about the webinar, you can go to celebrationbarreview.com/now, or you can just click on the button here in the show notes and we'll get you all registered for the next upcoming edition of this free training webinar. Now, I did mention that we've got video and audio versions of today's podcast. If you'd like to watch today's podcast, you can go to celebrationbarreview.com/305. That's the episode number. If you'd like to listen to the podcast, you can do that through Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, radio.com, or just about any place that podcasts are syndicated. So be sure to check that out and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the episodes. All right, let's go ahead and jump into our discussion with Megan and talk about what's been going on in a very busy week around the country with the bar exam and COVID-19.
Exam updates.
Okay.
Ready.
All right, let's
All
do it.
right. So as we've been doing every week for the last few weeks, I'm just going to go through what's changed since our last webinar. So in the last week, I think it's just helpful. There's a lot of information and it's very overwhelming. So this kind of breaks it down a bit more. If I don't cover your state, that means that nothing has changed since, at least officially, since a week ago. And so if you're not sure where it stands, as always, go and check with your state bar, make sure, double check. Things do move very rapidly. Oftentimes they move while we're in the middle of the webinar. So I do like to try to check before we sign off as well to make sure that nothing has changed in the hour that we've been talking, because that has happened several times. So we'll get right into it. We have fewer than last week, so that's kind of nice. All right, but so first up, I do this alphabetically. We've got Michigan. This is a state exam, not a UBE exam, but I'm highlighting it because they decided to do July 28th only, but they are doing it exclusively online, and they're just going to do the essay exam. So they're not going to be doing the MBE. So this is following a bit of a trend that we're starting to see with the state exams, where the people who are not tied to the national conference who would like to do it online are just dropping the MBE portion because they agree with Jackson that the NCBE has not really shown enough of an indication that they are actually going to be able or willing to put the MBE online, which is what California is hoping for. But these other states are just saying, that's okay, we're just going to skip it, this test administration.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about this, because I think that as we're seeing the trend line now, a number of states that are deciding that they want to go to an online administration of the test are recognizing that they don't have the multi-state bar exam component available to them. The NCBE just doesn't seem to be moving in that direction. And we've heard nothing to suggest that they're ready to do that. So given that circumstance, I think that we have to assume that if a state wants to go online, it appears that they're just going to say, we're not going to do the multi-state bar exam, and for one time, we'll just give a state exam. Now, I know we got some questions about this. If it is just a state exam, if it's some combination of essays and performance tests, the question we're getting from people is, well, does that mean I don't study for the MBE? What's your response to that?
Yeah, absolutely not. So it's this is a really important point, because I think there's been some confusion maybe about this. The MBE subjects are also fair game for the essays. So you absolutely have to study all of the subjects. Unfortunately, I know it sounds really exciting to think, oh, maybe I can just knock out an entire subject area and say, I hate CivPro, let me throw it out the window and I don't have to study it. You absolutely have to study it. Some states, even in their court orders about switching to an online exam where they don't have an MBE, have actually explicitly said that part of the reason they feel comfortable doing that in terms of minimum competency is because these are all testable within the essays. So students will still have to study them. I think you will really hurt yourself if you think that they will not test these subjects because there's not an MBE. We may see, who knows what's going to happen in some of these states. We may see more of those subjects tested on the essays than we normally would, or crossover questions, because they want to ensure that CivPro. So maybe they throw CivPro in as a crossover in there that they normally wouldn't have. So you've got to study everything, no matter what is happening.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think that's good advice. The other part of it is that doing multi-state multiple choice questions is a great way to learn the law. So I know we're going to get this question. Maybe we should just answer it now. Some people are saying, are you going to create a brand new course for X jurisdiction that's not doing the MBE? And the answer is no, we're not, for lots of reasons. But the essential reason, the most important reason, is because you still have to do the same work. You have to do the reading, you have to do the lectures, and doing the practice questions is still the best way to learn it. And since we don't know what these essay questions are going to look like, there's really no way to get at that other than the existing course materials that we're already using. So if you're in a state like Michigan or Indiana or Nevada, I think that those three come to mind, Massachusetts maybe is another one, you're going to go through the course, at least in our view right now, just as it's always been laid out, and you're going to do the same practice questions. Now, you may not do full-length MBEs at the end. That probably doesn't seem necessary, but that's a fairly minor alteration to your study guide. But I want to be explicit that there is no one that I know of is creating a one-off bar review course for the September 9th administration of, the Massachusetts or the Michigan bar exam or whatever it might be. I mean, it's just not going to happen. So you should study the same way, you should prepare the same way and go that way. I don't expect the NCBE to be able to come up now as we're coming up near the end of May, for them to have 3 online administrations of the multi-state bar exam ready. I think is just not going to happen. If that was going to be so, they would have said it at the beginning of May. And the longer we go without hearing anything makes me more and more convinced that that's not going to happen. Now, the big player in all this, as you said, is California.
Right. Yeah, which this California is doing the September 9th exam. And so I think that the other states have seen the writing on the wall that there will definitely not be a July online MBE. There's just no incentive for the NCBE to get that ready for them. So if a jurisdiction wants to hold the exam in July online, they just have to, they accept that there will not be an MBE part of that online.
And some people have contacted us and said, well, why couldn't they do it? How hard is it to put it online? Well, the problem is if you've got some jurisdictions that are doing it in paper and pencil and some that are online, now you have a massive security problem and you have a big potential for cheating and fraud. And I know that none of you would cheat or be fraudulent, but well, let's be honest, there are people out there that are desperate to pass the bar and would, in fact, either do it or try to take advantage of it. And the bar examiners just aren't going to let that happen. So I think that it's a pipe dream. I know some of you desperately want it, but it isn't going to happen. And I know some of you desperately want an online exam. Well, you're going to have some chances to do that, but it's going to be different. It's going to be essays. I guess we should talk about Nevada because that is one of the weird, permutations that we've got, right?
Yes. Yeah. So Nevada has said that they're going to do the remote exam. So online exam, it's going to be on July 28th and 29th. But this one, they decided they're going to make it open book. It's going to have no MBE. It's going to be 8 one-hour essays and a performance test. So they also recognize that if they want to do it online in July, that there's just not going to be an online version of the MBE then. So they've jettisoned it just for this exam. One thing that I did find interesting, because I know we talked about this last week, is that they explicitly said that you will not have to take it online if you have certain accommodations or if you're handwriting. So I know we had talked about that, that they will, this is the only state I've seen this, that they've explicitly said this, but it's worth checking into if you're in one of these jurisdictions. They will have some proctored exams for people who need certain accommodations and can't take it online, and for people who are handwriting the exam. So that's interesting, because I know we've had some questions about what if I absolutely cannot type this exam.
We're in the brave new world here.
Yes.
Those proctored exams might be like 10 people in a big room or something. I really don't know. And the other part of this with an open book exam, I know some of you are just delirious. I've gotten emails and texts from people who are just thrilled about an open book exam. I hate to bring you back down to earth, folks, but I've written a lot of these essay questions, and when you write an essay question that's open book,
takes a lot longer than an hour.
Lot longer than an hour. You're going to be stunned at what those questions are going to ask you to do. And the thing about proctoring online is that you're typically looking for eye movement and hand movement. And you obviously, with an open book exam, so what? The danger, of course, is pre-written answers. So some of people, I'm certain, are thinking, well, I'll just pre-write attack outline answers for every subject, and then I'll just fill them in as the question comes up. That is not going to work. Trust me. These are questions that will be written, I think in this case, almost certainly by law professors who've learned over the years how to write open book essay exam questions. And believe me, they are going to be much more detailed and much more challenging than you think. And I really think that what the examiners will be looking for is somebody that looks like they've got a pre-prepared template and they just drop stuff in. So that is not a good strategy if that's what you were thinking. And I hate to keep talking in this terms, but I know that there are people out there, not our students, but I know that there are people out there that are trying to figure out how to game the system. And this is going to be a very, very challenging period of time for the bar examiners and the bar taking population. And you're going to hear a lot of noise and a lot of crazy stuff. I want to just say, if you're listening to us today in the webinar, if you're listening later in our podcast, keep your head down, be honest and straightforward, be the kind and gentle member of our profession that you want to be the ethical person that you need to be, do your work and you'll be rewarded for that. And don't let this other stuff get to you, because I'm hearing and seeing it. I mean, my Twitter feed is just filling up with this crazy stuff, and I hate it. And so, will there be some opportunities to, play at the margins? Probably. Should you do it? Absolutely not.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's interesting that the Nevada Supreme Court, State Supreme Court said explicitly the reason why they're okay with the open book test is that they feel like functionally it's pointless to try and take it open book. So it really will just
Yeah.
alleviate the concerns about some of the concerns about cheating. If everybody, sure, you can all look at the book, but they really don't think it's going to make any difference that you will not have time with 60-minute time constraint to actually sit there and try to flip through pages and find the answer, which also I think really backs up what Jackson and I have been saying for so long, which is the essays are not testing your knowledge of black letter law, because if they were doing that, you could do that. And you could 100%, an open book test would help you immensely. If that's what they were testing and you could flip to that specific page and type out the definition for statute of frauds or hearsay or whatever it is, you would ace every exam if that's what they were actually testing. This, I think, really backs up what we've been saying, which is that that's not what they're testing. They're testing your legal reasoning and analysis. And in fact, that's what the Nevada State Board of Bar Examiners said explicitly, is that what they're looking for is your ability to use legal reasoning, which is what you do actually in the profession of law. And so that this open book more mimics that, whereas an attorney, as a practicing attorney, you would look up the law and then you would apply your own reasoning to that law. And that's what they're looking for you to do in these essays. That's why they're okay with open book, and that's why they're okay with no MBE, because they feel that this is a more accurate picture of what you actually do in practice. So again, the essays are not testing your knowledge of black letter law and whether or not you memorized the law. So
It's a great point.
My soapbox, I want to throw it up there.
Yeah. And the last part of this piece is that we are getting questions about, is this the end of the MBE? No, absolutely not. It'll be back.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. It's
no question about that. So,
yeah.
Okay. What else we got?
Okay.
we tackled some of the big ones right up front there, didn't we?
Yes.
Okay. Good us.
So now we've got Minnesota. That's UBE. They had said, September 9th through 10th in addition or in lieu of the July exam, and they decided on 2 exam dates. So they'll be doing a July exam and the September 9th and 10th. That follows the trend that we have been seeing lately of jurisdictions choosing to do 2 in order to spread out the number of takers rather than just switching to a later date with uncertainty about whether or not they would even be able to hold the exam then.
So we're a fair number of jurisdictions now that are saying that they're going to do it twice. Some of the jurisdictions are giving applicants a choice. Many are not, right? They're just saying you're going to go to one or the other. We'll talk about some of those. Okay.
Right. Yeah. Okay, New York, we're kind of fuzzy here. They didn't make any changes, but we're past the registration deadline for that sort of phase 1. That was May 15th, where they were only allowing recent graduates, so basically 3Ls of New York law schools who had never taken and failed the bar before to apply to sit for the exam. So we're past that registration. But we are not sure yet and kind of haven't been hearing.
We haven't seen anything. We haven't seen, we haven't seen any evidence yet that anyone else has been allowed to sit for the exam. I suspect what's happening is that they're trying to go through and sort out those applications, figure out their seating requirements, and then make a decision. If anyone is aware of something that's happened since that date, we'd love to know it. But our latest information is that we're still sitting, waiting, and I'm not aware that anyone has been allowed to apply after that May 15th deadline. So I think at this point, if you are thinking about the New York bar exam and you don't have an admission, you haven't applied and been told that you're in the queue, you should assume you cannot take it in fall of 2020 and going back either to February 2021 or taking the UBE in another jurisdiction. Maybe we ought to flip over to Washington State, since that's one that foreign trained attorneys are typically try to take. It's a UBE jurisdiction. You could use it to replace a New York jurisdiction and then have your score transferred. But Washington did something, again, totally unprecedented. I have never in 30 years seen this, but go ahead and tell us what they did.
And I read the order and they gave no rationale for it. So it's a Christmas gift to those of you who can get yourselves to Washington State and would like to maybe practice there. They have lowered their passing score from 270 to 266. So we do not know why. They say because of coronavirus and that they want to make sure that they have enough licensed attorneys in the state. I don't know why coronavirus specifically impacts that concern. I mean, it's a great concern to make sure that you've got enough attorneys and your graduates are able to practice law in that state. I'm not sure what coronavirus has to do with it, but temporarily only. So only for the 2020 administrations, the new passing score in Washington state is a 266. So that is 4-point gift to anyone who is taking it in that state. That's and wants to practice in that state.
Or taking the UBE anywhere. I mean,
That's true, right? Yes,
wants
to practice in Washington.
Yeah, you can transfer in a 266 from New York into Washington. In Washington, am I correct? Is the state giving the exam twice? July.
Yes, I believe so. Yeah.
So September 9th. Yeah, I truly, this may be the law of unintended consequences. When you're trying to reduce the number of people taking your exam, why do you reduce your score? Doesn't that mean more people would come to take your exam?
Right. I'm not sure, but I guess it's that, never look a gift horse in the mouth. We'll just accept, which I don't really know what that means, but we will accept that. And if you are have ever thought about practicing in Washington state, or you've got some flexibility, there you go. Like there's an easier standard for you to meet there. So yeah, but it will only be for 2020. They said that starting in February 2021 exam, it will go back up. So
so if you were a California bar taker and you went to an ABA accredited school, I need to put that in there.
Yeah.
And California, if we put it on the UBE scale, would require a 288 to pass. So if you switched out of California and went to any UBE jurisdiction and got 22 points less, you could be licensed in Washington state, which I hear is a wonderful place to live and work. So, I'm just saying, as bad as California's been, that's certainly one place to be looking at. It's crazy stuff. What do we know about California? Nothing's really changed there, right?
No, nothing's changed. So they're still planning on the September 9th and 10th and still planning on online. We will know a lot more, I suspect, after the June first year law students examination is given. Right. I really think that's going to be the big kind of tipping point of seeing how it goes to have that online. So yeah, I know you've been making me jump around. So we're going to go.
Sorry.
I know. We're going to go back to Oregon now. So we're staying on the West Coast. So as of May 15th, the board said it reached its maximum seating capacity in Oregon. So that means as of now, you cannot sit for the UBE in Oregon. But I will note that Maine said they reached their capacity and then they found some more seats. So keep checking if you live in Oregon or you wanted to take it in Oregon and you didn't get registered or you didn't get a seat. It's possible that more might open up. I have been hearing that in a few jurisdictions that they're trying to find additional venues so that more people can take it. So definitely, it's closed as of May 15th, but it would not be unprecedented for it to open back up again.
Let me stop here for just a minute to talk about something else that touches on this, and that's the question I'm getting about how many 3Ls or 4Ls, first-time bar takers, are sitting for the bar exam nationally right now, or do we anticipate? I continue to believe it will be a smaller number than usual. The only reason that some of these jurisdictions are filling up is because they've dramatically compressed the number of bar takers they can accept. So I've heard from people saying, well, all the 3Ls must all be taking the bar exam in New York. No, they're not. But trust me, there's a big difference between the 6,000 or 7,000 that we normally get in that exam. They can't accommodate anywhere near that number in this refined version. It's sort of like saying, well, we can fill up all the seats at USC for the football game. No, you can put a small number of people in. The Coliseum's still big. You just can't put many people in. So I think there's a reality here that most of these 3Ls, particularly the top 3Ls, the ones that have jobs, are going to use the diploma waiver, diploma privilege for the year or 6 months, whatever it might be in their jurisdiction. I think we're going to see a relatively small number of those people in the exams all across the country. So don't misread these limits in states like Oregon as saying, oh, there must be a ton of people. I know we're going to talk about Tennessee. There aren't that many Tennessee law school grads, but they're filling up. How is that? Well, because they've just shrunk the numbers of that's what's really happening.
Yeah, definitely. All right. And then our last state update, and then we'll move on to questions, is Tennessee. So they filled up their July 2020 exam, and Tennessee was the one, just to remind you guys, that was doing the tiered first-time bar takers from Tennessee law schools. Then once they filled that up, they'd go to second-time bar takers from Tennessee law schools, then third from Tennessee law schools, etc. So they filled up their July 2020 exam. Again, as Jackson said, assuming the numbers are dramatically lower, the number of seats that were available was dramatically lower than it normally would be. They have assigned others to September 30th to October 1st, or you can defer to February 2021. So make sure, you should have probably gotten an email from this Tennessee board if you were already registered and you didn't make it in, but check with the board and see where you are on that. But Tennessee is, like New York, a bit unique in that pretty much they're saying only people who've graduated from our state law schools are going to be able to take it here.
The truth is there just aren't that many of them. So, again,
Yeah.
that tells me that there aren't going to be many seats.
Right. Yeah.
It doesn't tell me that there's a bunch of law school
Right.
grads. There aren't that many. So that's part of what's going on. Now, another jurisdiction to at least be aware of is Florida. You can always enroll in Florida late. You'll pay a premium for that. And of course, Florida has continued to say they're going to give the exam July 28th and 29th, 2 locations, Tampa and Orlando. Whew, that's going to be crazy. And the big thing there is a 14-day self-quarantine. If you're coming in from out of state, you got to come in 14 days in advance and acknowledge that or affirm that before you walk into the test center. In addition to all of that is the reality that you got to wear a mask. So I would suggest actually for everyone, regardless of what state you are in, if you're taking the exam in July or September and you are going to be in person, not an online exam, you should start studying now with a mask on. I don't know how many of you have had this experience if you're wearing masks. It's one thing to wear a mask for a walk around the neighborhood for a half hour or an hour. It is a very different thing to wear a mask for 6 or 7 or 8 hours, basically without a break. And you should get used to doing all of that so that you have the opportunity to just practice and get used to it. I would also suggest that you buy some different masks. I have learned that they are different sizes, and there are all sorts of interesting things that happen when you do that.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think buy some extra masks, practice with them, get used to that. Again, I'm getting lots of questions. Would Florida move their exam back? They might. We have not heard anything. I'm tending to believe, given the nature of our reopening here in Florida, that they're going to press on, even if we have a big second wave of virus. So that's my sense at this moment. Just to finish up the discussion of states and changes, I want to let everybody know that on our website at celebrationbarreview.com, there is a menu item called July 2020 exam changes. You can check that. We keep it up to date with not only the status, but the links to the different states and what they are doing. I think that this coming week is probably going to be fairly significant. I mean, as we turn the corner into June, I think a lot of states will begin to finalize what they're doing, simply because you just got to. I mean, just logistically, you got to tell people what they're going to be tested, how they're going to be tested, where they're going to go, what kinds of tickets they're going to get. The other thing, of course, is that results from February 2020 are now wrapped up. Georgia today was the last state, I think, to come in. So I think we're now at that point where everyone sort of turns their focus and says, here's what we've got to do. So crazy times, aren't they?
They are indeed.
Well, I hope that information brings everybody up to date. I just want to remind you that we have a space on our website with all of the updates to the July 2020 exams. You can find that by going to celebrationbarreview.com and just look at the menu item that says July 2020 exam changes. Now I want to turn our attention for the rest of this week's episode to an interview we did recently with a successful Florida bar exam student. I know you're going to find this conversation encouraging and uplifting, so let's go ahead and jump right into it. Buddy, welcome back to Hanging Out with Successful Bar Exam Takers. We have a wonderful opportunity today to talk to a newly successful Florida bar member. Hi, Melanie. How are you?
Hi, Jackson. I'm good. How are you?
Well, good. You've got a great story. This goes back quite a few years, really, and it's got to feel great to you right now.
It does. It's huge relief, honestly.
Yeah. And your story, I think, is going to inspire a lot of folks. So I want to jump right into it. Maybe you can tell our audience a little bit about your background and how you got to the point of taking the bar exam.
Well, I think I've always wanted to be a lawyer, honestly, since I was maybe 10 and I did one of those reports on career day and I went to the library and, back in the day when you go to the library and get books and, and I just worked towards that. And I got into law school. I'm from Florida. I went to law school in New York, though. I got into New York Law School. My husband and I went to New York together. We were already married. He did dental school. I did law school. And I was just very excited. It was, it was an exciting place to go to law school, honestly. The problem was, is that I wanted to practice in Florida. And it's not always easy for someone who's trained in the Northeast to be a Florida attorney. But I had some amazing experiences. I worked for a T&E lawyer for a year in New York, and she was amazing. She taught me a lot. I went to all 5 boroughs of New York, all the courts, and learned a lot, and I really had an appreciation for the practice of law. And then I came back here and wasn't very successful with big box bar reviews and all that stuff. I got pregnant with my first child, and which was a blessing and awesome, but not very conducive to studying for anything.
Just to stop, you took the exam the first time in 2015, is that right?
2014.
2014, okay. And then your first child was born what year?
She was born July 2016.
Okay. So a couple years in, you've been trying, not having some success, and then you get pregnant, and now a baby and the bar. Tell me about that.
Okay, so I got pregnant and I stopped taking the bar for a while with my first child, because when you become a new mom, you really don't know what you're doing, and you're fascinated. At least I was fascinated and in love with my daughter, and thinking about anything else was just kind of counterintuitive and just not where my head was at. And with the bar exam, your head's got to really be on straight, and you got to know, you have to have your eye on focus and you be in the game or whatever. And when you're a first time mom, I mean, maybe some people could do it, but I was just fascinated with my daughter and very into raising her and seeing all these things. So I wasn't prepared to take the exam again until I believe she was 2 already. And
it came to me, wasn't it?
Yes,
think that's the point, right? That's
when I came to you, because I knew that doing what I had done in the past just wasn't going to cut it. And so I came to you, and immediately I started having some issues with my daughter wasn't chewing food, and I took her to a whole bunch of evaluations and to see if she, autism was thrown in there and all this stuff. And so I had to put my studying on hold. This was October when I came to you, and immediately I started taking her to evaluations, and it was hard. But then January, end of December, I contacted you, and we worked it out so that I was kind of, you're like, you told me this is a realistic goal. If you do this, you could do it. If not, I'm not sure. And we started working with each other, and I started, going at it. Once we figured out, my daughter just had a sensitivity. Once we figured out what she had and how to help her and everything, I was able to focus on something else. Once she was taken care of, and once we knew she's okay, she's going to be fine, I started studying. But at that point, I was studying for the February bar, and it was like beginning of January, and I had a toddler. So you had that, and all of a sudden something else happened end of January, when I'm in the middle of studying hardcore. I find out I'm pregnant. And I don't have nice, easy pregnancies. I have, getting sick all hours of everything pregnancies. So here I am with a toddler studying with you. I was doing the personal training course with you. So I was talking to you regularly and everything, and with a toddler and getting sick a lot.
Yeah, and I just want to stop here because, I have a lot of conversations with people where they're cheerful and looking a little green, but you were cheerful and green before we started some of those calls, before I ever said a word. It was like, oh my gosh, how much more difficult can this be? And yet you really were pretty realistic about it. You knew the challenges, but you also were very focused in the sense of you knew that long term you were going to do this, even if it wasn't going to happen right at that moment. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, I was very determined, and I knew that I was going to do this, okay? And I knew for some reason with your course, I felt, even with all these obstacles and all these things, I felt confident that I could do it. Where the confidence started to wane was when I was looking and I was made aware that I wasn't going to finish your course the first time, because I had this momentum and I was keeping it. If you remember, I was making very good time and everything, but with, I did get very sick, and I did try, and I think that I might have passed that first time with you had I not let myself be psyched out a bit, because I think part of the bar exam is confidence, and a big part of the bar exam is confidence, is walking in there and knowing I got this, or I have all the tools I need. And I was very close to finishing your course, but because of all those obstacles, I didn't. So I didn't do any of the practice tests at the end. I think I was missing 2 Florida subjects or something like that. And that doesn't seem like it really isn't. Knowledge-wise, it's really not that big of a deal. But when you're psychologically, it was huge. And I went in there, wondering, oh my God, am I going to get sick in the middle of this exam? First of all, I had my nausea medication with me. I had, a letter to one of those things to make sure, a medical thing to make sure that I could have food and water, because I would not have been able to do that without any snack or whatever. I got sick in the middle of the exam anyway. And I was just very psyched out because I was like, I didn't finish this course. I didn't do everything that I could possibly do. And when you have that type A personality, you need to do everything that you possibly can, because if not, you're going to psych yourself out and you're going to be your worst enemy. And that happened to me that first time. I really do think that I had the knowledge and everything with what I had from your course to pass that first time. I really do. But I was very close too, if you remember.
You were very close. And I remember afterwards when you got your results, this is the thing that sticks out to me, is how determined you were. It was like, okay, all right, I get it. I see what happened. Not happy about it, but I see where I can go from here, and let's just put our head down and start back to work. And that was pretty impressive to me. I mean, with all of the circumstances and the toddler and now more pregnant, so there was a lot going on in your life, to say the least, right?
Yes. But, I was the way I looked at it was this way. If I got this far with you and being sick and, all these things in my life that were going on, then I could do this. There was like a light in the end of the tunnel type of thing that I had, in the past when I had tried the exam, I'd never been this close, so I was like, I'm going to do this. There's a light in the end of the tunnel. I just have to keep on at that point. I was very determined to be a good example for my daughter. I wanted her to be able to know that she could do anything. If she saw that, mommy's a lawyer, mommy did it, I could do anything. Those type of examples are very important with kids. So
yeah, and someday, Melanie, she'll watch this interview and go, whoa, Mom. Both of your kids will do that, right? Yeah, that's a very cool thing. So let's fast forward. You go back into the exam, and this time you get through part of the exam, pass part of it, but not the whole exam. You pass part A, the Florida part. You do really well. And on the multi-state, you come up just short, and you miss the whole exam. I mean, you miss, the compensatory model by 2.5 points. What did that feel like?
Oh my God. Okay. So at this point, I'm heavily pregnant. And when I went to take that exam, I was heavily pregnant and just kind of really uncomfortable and really, really uncomfortable. And I was still getting sick, by the way. When I say I have bad pregnancies, both of them were the same. So, I was getting sick at the same time, but I was kind of had this over it mentality. But so it has to do with pacing myself. So the Florida section was the first day. Okay. That's huge, actually. For me, it was, at least with the pregnancy and everything, because I was fresh and I did those essays, and essays for some reason have always kept my focus longer than multiple choice, because you're writing away an essay and it's very easy to be carried away in an essay and not break. So unless my bladder was screaming at me, I didn't, With multiple choice, it takes, at least for me, it's always taken a lot more concentration, a lot more stamina. And the fact that that MBE is the second day, I think it hurt me a little. I think I was fatigued. But the point is that when I found out that I had passed one part and I needed to pass the other, I was tired. I was about to give birth. When the results came out, I was about to give birth. Okay.
No.
So I was tired. I was nesting, trying to, bring in my new baby into this world and, making everything ready. And I was just like, oh no, not again. I have to do this. But I tried to stay positive in that I had one portion down. So, and I said, you know what, I'm not going to do what I did with my first child and leave everything, for when he becomes 2 years old. I have to just keep going. And maybe it'll be a lot easier if all I have to do is focus on the second part. The problem is having a baby, a newborn, and not sleeping, and a toddler who I was having problems potty training. Like, it was just, you have potty training starting school, because I was trying to start her in school, but she had to be potty trained. And then having this newborn baby and having the toddler being like jealous of the newborn baby. And it's a lot. But I said, you know what, I have to do this because it's never going to get easier at this point. It's just going to get harder. And honestly, I kept going. I was a little bit discouraged. I'm not going to lie to you. I was at this point, because of the fact that I was about to give birth and all these things were happening. And I really thought that I had passed, because I was a little bit more confident the second time around. But again, I'm sure a lot of pregnant women pass the exam and everything. And I think that that's amazing. And I really give kudos to any woman who, as a parent or pregnant or anything, goes in there, you're pregnant, because it is so hard, because you're taking this exam that's hard when you're not pregnant and uncomfortable. At least for me, the chairs, everything, my back, you have to understand, I was the most uncomfortable person ever that I have been, and taking that exam. So, I tried to cut myself a little bit of slack. And that's how I just kind of, I go, you know what? I need to be stronger, and I'm going to pass this other part. And I kind of gave myself a pep talk saying, there's nowhere to go but up from here. You just got to keep going.
Put it in perspective for our audience. You only missed by 2 questions.
Yes.
So it wasn't like you bombed the multi-state. You could have been almost a Scribner's error that would have kept you out. So in some ways that's easy, because you're close to it. In some ways it's very hard, because it's like, oh my gosh, so little would have changed it. So you reset yourself and took some time for the second baby, and then you pushed on to the February 2020 exam to take just the multi-state, just Part B, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, as you were studying this time, what are you doing? What's in your thought process as you're coming up on this exam?
My thought process was, because I knew that I needed to be as confident as possible, my thought process was do everything that I didn't do before. So I literally every Sunday, I would leave the house, leave the baby, everything with my husband. We had an understanding on Sundays, he would have to stay with the children, and I would go to Starbucks with the noise and everything, because I thought it was important to learn to focus with noise around me. And I would take a practice exam, MBE practice exam. I started off with only half an exam for the first 2. And then I literally did everything every exam that you have there for me to do, I did.
Yeah.
Because I needed that. At that point, I knew that I had all the information I needed. Okay. I knew that I had done your course twice. I had all the information MBE wise. I had finished MBE subjects. So I had all this information, but I thought this is just another exam. This is just another. And in able to get there, I had to do all of those practice exams to get my mind where it needed to be. I had done your course twice with the MBE. So I had that knowledge there. That's very important.
Yeah. And were you a photo reader?
Yes, I was. So photo reading, I still don't know if it worked. It's very strange. So it had to have worked. It's so weird. So you do this photo reading and you kind of feel like you're doing it wrong. At least I did. I felt like I was being ridiculous looking at a page and just turning the page. And like, it was just one of those, but it had to have worked because I did notice that I was moving along more quickly and absorbing more information. But till this day, I feel like I don't know what I'm doing when I do it. But I gave it a shot because it was something that I needed when you don't have a lot of time, and when there was a subject, when I would do a practice exam and there was a subject I was particularly weak on, I'd go back to the outline. And instead of, you don't want to be there for like days there, because it's not hours, it's days with an outline if you're just reading it, because not many people could sit there with that outline and read it like you would a novel. So I would photo read it. I say this because I really do feel this. I am very insecure about my photo reading, but I did it anyway because I think it did work, because I would get better the next time I would do an exam. I wouldn't have a problem in that subject. But it's one of those things that, like I said, photo reading is kind of like, I call it like witchcraft and wizardry, because I didn't know, I did everything that, in the course for the photo reading and everything, but I still felt like I didn't know what I was doing. But it did help. I don't know how to explain that.
That's good enough. I mean, I don't know how electricity or the internet work either. So there you go. Okay. So you do all of this practice and preparation, and now you're going back in to take the exam in February, and you've been in the exam before, but this time you're not pregnant, and so you're not sick. That had to be a relief to be able to go in and take it like a relatively normal person, right?
Yeah, it actually was a huge relief. I went in very calm, actually. I took a bag to leave in that room when there's a room to leave a bag. I took a bag with a cooler inside the bag with food. So I didn't have to leave anything. I didn't have to be worried about food. I had my headphones in. I didn't talk to anyone. Very important, by the way. Don't talk to anyone. I was very calm. I was very focused. I wasn't nervous this time around. This was very different. I went in there with the knowledge that I had done everything that I could. And that since other times I had, fallen short with one way or another, not being able to take a test, being pregnant. This time I didn't have any of that against me. So I kind of went, you know what? I can pass this exam. I've taken practice tests that I've passed, and I can pass this exam. I don't feel sick. It was kind of that type of thing. I guess since I had so many strikes against me and the others, and I didn't have those obstacles at this point, I was fine. I went in there. I sat down for this exam. I wasn't crazy nervous. You're going to be a little nervous, even though you're calm and you know that you did everything. At least I'm a nervous person, so there's going to be some nerves, but they didn't control the outcome. And I just went in there and I did my thing, and I was focused, and it worked.
Yeah, and then you come home and you've got 6 weeks of waiting. But of course, with a 3-year-old and a newborn, results come out. Tell me about finding out about your results.
So I go and I'm checking it all morning. And when it finally comes up, I find my number, and I had to get a ruler to make sure that my pass was my pass. You're there with a ruler, whatever. And I cried, and not like the soft cry either, like the ugly cry, like the, oh my God cry. I went to law school. I graduated law school in 2014. I have 2 kids, I also have really bad stomach issues. It's starting to get controlled now, and that really also, health-wise, it's been very hard. So I had all these things against me, and I did it, and I passed. And I'm getting emotional now because it still really hasn't hit me, but there was part of me, it's kind of like being in shock. So I kept checking it, honestly, like one of those obsessive compulsive people. I kept checking it to make sure it wouldn't change. And you're probably looking at me like I'm crazy, but it's true. I kept checking it. I was like, maybe I'm delusional or something, because all this time that I've been studying for this test, and that, this test has kind of been like this big obstacle in my mind, and kind of like this impossible thing. And all of a sudden it wasn't impossible anymore. And I was just so happy. And I think I grabbed my toddler and we danced. And when I told my husband, he just kind of like, he was so happy. We were all so happy. We didn't know what to do. And I was crying. And I think that there was a lot of crying. I just didn't know. I didn't process it, but at the same time, it was half shock. There was so much emotion there because you're going through these things. And even though I knew I had to keep going and I had to keep going and I had to keep going, the idea of me passing, I hadn't grasped what I would do once I would pass. I just kind of had to get there. I'm still very emotional on it.
As you should be. It's an extraordinary achievement, Melanie. And I think the future for you is so bright, but the culmination of a 6-year odyssey to get to this point has to be a moment of great emotional release. And I know for your family, that's a big deal. And as I say, years from now, I hope that your kiddos will have a chance to watch this interview and really find out what mommy did, because that's really something. And we're very proud of you. Do you have any advice? I know that there are people in our audience who are going to be watching this who may be in similar situations with families, certainly staying at home right now and lots of challenges in the world. What advice would you give those individuals as they're looking at the bar? Maybe they've taken and failed it. What would you tell them?
The biggest thing is that with this exam, you've said it a lot, actually, that you're your worst enemy with this exam. And I know that you keep hearing this. I know that you keep hearing that you are your worst enemy and that you need to believe in yourself. And I know that you have to be trying to do this, but I promise that this was the difference between me passing and failing, okay? Believing that I could do this, walking in there and really believing I'm going to do this, whether it's now or later, I'm doing this. I am capable of doing this. And there's no reason why that person over there is a lawyer and I'm not. No reason whatsoever. You graduated law school just like they did. You made it just like they did. You might have more obstacles. You might have children. You might have a job. You might have all these things, but you can do it. Maybe it takes you a little bit more time, but that doesn't matter. It matters that you get from point A to point B. It doesn't matter how quickly you do it. You do everything that Jackson tells you to do because it does make a huge difference. I would have never been able to do that with a big box bar review. I didn't have that type of support. I didn't have the type of understanding. I didn't have a person there, just helping me through and saying, okay, realistically, this is what we have to do. It makes a very big difference. But in addition to that, you can have all the support in the world, but if you don't believe that you can do it, you're not going to. So you have to believe that you can do it. So whatever you need to do to get into that mindset, do everything Jackson tells you to. I didn't sleep for a while studying for this exam because when you have 2 kids, think about when you have time to do this. My husband works on Saturdays. So, it's more likely than not you're doing it at night. And with 3 a.m. feedings and everything, I just wasn't sleeping for a while. It's only temporary, the not sleeping, okay? You can do it. You're capable of a lot. If you don't have time, there's always time. You have to find those little niches, even if it's at 4 a.m. or 3 a.m. and it sucks and you hate life and, you have chills because you think you're getting a cold, but it's really because you're exhausted. But you can do it if you can do this. Put in the time, have confidence in yourself, and you can do it. I did it with 2 kids, health problems, and, a toddler that needed a little extra attention, and I did it.
And we are so pleased for you, so proud of you. One of the fun things for me as a teacher, as a mentor, is to watch the growth of our students. And I watched you go from being really sort of not sure where to go with it and what to do and of yourself to being very confident and very determined and growing through this and just refusing to give up no matter what the circumstance was. I think that determination makes me confident that the kind of lawyer that you're going to be is going to be outstanding. That is the quality that I would look for in a counselor at law. And I know that it's a remarkable quality. So congratulations to you. Any final thoughts that you want to share with our audience today?
Your course really, really helped. I don't know if it's the way that you structure it. I don't know if it's the support you give me. I don't know what it was, but your course it made sense even after taking the bar exam and everything. Your course put the exam in a way that I was able to understand it more. I don't know how to explain that, but I didn't understand it as much even after taking it with 2 other bar review courses before you. Okay. And even taking the exam and everything, it didn't make as much sense until I had your course. Okay. And I think that your course is very special and what you do is very special, and it helped me immensely, and you helped me immensely. And I'm not sure that I would have been able to pass without you. So I really do appreciate that.
Well, thank you. That is very kind of you and very generous. I appreciate that so much. I know that our audience is going to be encouraged by your story. They're going to be determined and follow in your footsteps. I think it's going to be fun to watch what happens with your career over time, and watching your kiddos grow up and just seeing the kind of life and family that you raise. And so I'm really very grateful that we've been able to be part of this journey with you, and I hope we'll continue to be able to do that. So I want to thank you for sharing your story, telling us about what's happened, and just want to encourage you. And, I know we're all in isolation right now, but, give you virtual high fives and hugs and lots of confetti, and enjoy these moments ahead on so many levels. And again, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you so much.
All right. And to our audience, we'll see you again next time. Thanks for being here. Bye-bye, everybody. Our episode for this week, we covered a lot of ground. Coronavirus, new Florida bar members, lots of stuff going on. Want to remind you before we sign off that our free training webinar, Now is the Best Time to Take the Bar Exam, is available twice a week on Saturdays and Tuesday nights. And you can register for free just by going to the show notes or by going to celebrationbarreview.com/now. And we'll see you on that webinar with the live Q&A at the end, and bring up to date on everything that's going on around the bar exam. And of course, next week we'll be back with more information about what's happening in the world, some additional updates on a few of the states that gave out their bar results at the end of the week. We don't have statistics yet from all of them, but we'll be compiling that, and we'll be sharing that information with you next week. So we'll see you next week along the Extra Mile. Take care, everybody.
Thanks for listening and watching the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers at celebrationbarreview.com.